Hi guys, Carole Hibbard here, and I'm coming to you straight from my laundry room because I'm trying to be quiet and not wake Steve up because it is very late here in California. Anyway, when I first started this, it was yesterday. Now it's not. It's today. So I'm a little late on the lesson here. I just want to talk about my 4 worst ever jobs. My one very first job ever was to work at a cannery. And the worst part was I worked graveyard in the tomatoes. When you worked in the tomatoes, the fruit would come along on the belt, and we were supposed to, it was all women, and we're supposed to pull out all the branches and the weeds and the whatever, the garbage, right, that comes along on the belt. And then the belt goes up and into a huge vat, that's what they cooked the tomato soup in. Well, guess what? Garter snakes and crickets also came along that belt, and guess what? They did not get picked off, because as women, they come by and we're like, we jump back, and they went right into the soup. So I wouldn't eat canned tomato soup for years and years and years. The next one was that I worked for the Mutual Readers League. It was actually a telemarketer's job, but I don't think we called it that back then. It was like 1969. And I was supposed to read this script and sell people a whole bunch of magazines, like $600 worth of magazines. Terrible thing. I felt like a crook, and they were crooks. But the whole time I was trying to work there, this manager and some other lady, I don't know if she's secretary or what, they're in the back corner making out. It was awful. I was 19. It was this one little bitty room, and I was so embarrassed. And so I hated that job. The rest of the time I did pretty darn good until Steve and I got laid off back in the early 80s. We worked over in the Bay Area, and we got laid off from contract engineering for the phone company. And so we lost a house in that process, the whole thing. It was a bad, bad time. During that time, we decided we moved back to Modesto, where life was cheap and affordable, and had to start all over again. So in the meantime, I'm on unemployment along with thousands of other people, and took whatever jobs I could get. So I worked for this idiot that I called Bozo the engineer. It was this guy he's an actual electrical engineer, but he looked like Bozo the clown. He was bald on top, had red, scraggly hair coming out all around his head, very long, and he was an idiot. And I was his first real employee ever. Otherwise, he had his wife, his 2 kids, and his best friend, and that was his business. And so there I am trying to draft all this paperwork for them, trying to make all these drawings up for this project that they had a deadline looming for. And in the meantime, he and his wife are having fights. They're fighting with the kids. They're throwing things. They're yelling and screaming, and it was just horrible. Anyway, he also kept laying me off. I'd work a week and he'd lay me off because he really couldn't afford a full-time employee. I finally had to fire him. I finally had to say, Alan, I can't come back to work for you because I can't afford it. I've got unemployment. If I don't work, I have to continue looking for work. But I said, I can't do this, work on one week and off the next. I just can't do it. Everything gets messed up, and I don't have enough money, and I've got 4 kids. Can't do it. So I didn't work there anymore. Then the next one, I ended up working at a Radio Shack, and I hated that. Had to work at the counter selling electronics at Radio Shack. My son had to go to Stanford for major surgery on his chest, and I was determined that I was going to be there with him. And I needed money to do that, so I worked there until such time as I left to go with him to Stanford. And yes, they really do ask for your name, your address, your phone number. I think maybe even your blood type. I don't know. I'd have people say, I'm only buying a pack of batteries. Sorry, I gotta ask you all this stuff and fill it up. I'm sorry. Anyway, I hated that job. So those are my worst ones I can think of offhand. There may have been a few others sprinkled in there. I had lots of other jobs, but those were the 4 that really came to mind. Thank you. Great assignment, Neve.